All right, so you seem really interested in tackling fear and like personal growth stuff.
Yeah.
Based on what you sent over.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a deep dive today into Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers.
Okay.
It's such a classic. I mean, this book has sold millions of copies, and it's still relevant after like 30 years.
Right.
There's got to be something to it.
It's pretty amazing. What's really fascinating is Jeffers doesn't tell us to conquer fear. She actually says we can use it to fuel our growth. So think about your own goals, whether it's finally going for that promotion or putting yourself out there like dating or anything that's been holding you back, honestly.
Yeah.
This book might just have the key for you.
Wow. I love that idea of fear being like a signpost for growth.
Yeah.
I've always thought of it as like something to just avoid.
Yeah.
And maybe it's more like a compass pointing me in the right direction.
I like that.
And speaking of compasses, Susan Jeffers is a psychologist, so she really gets that whole human experience of fear.
Right.
I bet that makes her approach super practical.
Absolutely. And you know what's really cool?
Right.
Is she breaks down this big, scary emotion of fear into like manageable layers.
Okay.
It's like peeling back an onion.
My God.
Each layer reveals something new about ourselves.
Okay, so let's peel back those layers then. What's the first one?
Well, the first layer is those surface fears, you know, the obvious ones.
Right.
What if I mess up this presentation? Or what if they reject me?
Right.
You know, these are the feels that are kind of front and center in our minds.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the ones that keep me up at night sometimes.
Yeah.
But what's like lurking beneath those surface fears?
Well, that's where we get to the deeper fears.
Oh,
The ones
Cynthia?
tied to our relationships and how our lives are playing out. Fears like
Yeah.
being alone, losing someone we love, or not achieving those dreams.
Right.
These fears are often rooted in like our need for connection and purpose.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's not just about the surface level stuff.
Right.
It's about those like deeper anxieties that we all carry with us. But I think there's another layer, right?
Yes, the core fear. This is where it gets really interesting.
Uh.
This is the fear that underlies almost everything else. It's that fear that we won't be able to handle what life throws at us.
Okay.
The fear of inadequacy, of not being enough.
Whoa. That hits close to home.
Right.
I think a lot of us struggle with that feeling, even if we don't always admit it.
Absolutely. And you know what's really empowering?
What?
Jeffers says that by recognizing this core fear, we can actually start to gain control over it.
Oh, interesting.
It's like shining a light on the monster in the closet.
I love that.
It's not as scary once you see it for what it is.
Right. So if most of our fears stem from this belief that we're not enough, maybe by like tackling that core fear, we can weaken the hold that those other fears have on us.
That's the idea. It's like tackling the root of the problem instead of just trimming the leaves.
I like that analogy a lot.
And what's really cool is that this idea connects to other psychological theories as well, like cognitive behavioral therapy. Have you ever noticed how like athletes use positive self-talk to boost their performance?
Oh, yeah, all the time. They're constantly pumping themselves up and visualizing success.
Exactly. It's the same principle here.
Wow.
By addressing that core fear of inadequacy, we can actually start to reframe our thoughts and beliefs in a more positive and empowering way.
So it's like we're training our minds to focus on our strengths and our capabilities.
Right.
Instead of getting bogged down by all those fears, this is already starting to shift my perspective.
That's great.
Tell me more about these tools.
Yeah.
What else does Jeffers have up her sleeve?
Well, one of the key tools that Jeffers offers is her 5 truths about fear.
Okay.
These truths are like little nuggets of wisdom
Yeah.
that can help us reframe our relationship with fear entirely.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Spill the tea. What are these truths?
Well, one that really resonated with me,
Yeah.
especially since you mentioned like wanting to build confidence,
Yeah.
is that fear never really goes away. As long as we're growing and like pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
Wait, so I'm always going to have to deal with fear.
Right.
That's kind of daunting.
It might sound that way at first, but think about it this way.
Okay.
If you're feeling fear, it means you're stretching yourself. You're evolving. That nervous feeling is actually a sign that you're on the right track.
Oh, that's such a cool way to look at it.
Yeah.
I guess it takes a pressure off needing to be like fearless all the time.
Exactly.
So embracing fear means I'm on the path to growth.
Exactly. And that leads us to another one of Jeffers' truths.
Okay.
The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to actually do it.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do I make myself do the thing if I'm terrified?
It's not about the fear magically vanishing.
Right.
It's about taking action despite the fear, and each time you do that, you chip away at fear's power over. You remember?
Yeah.
Courage isn't the absence of fear.
Okay.
It's taking action even when you're afraid.
That reminds me of that time I finally went skydiving
Oh.
I was so scared leading up to it,
Uh-huh.
but the feeling of accomplishment afterward was incredible. It
Yeah.
made me realize I was capable of so much more than I thought.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And the more you face your fears, the more confident you become. It's like building a muscle.
So how do we actually shift from feeling paralyzed by fear
Yeah.
to feeling empowered?
Right. Well, Jeffers suggests that it all starts with our mindset and the language we use.
Oh, so it's not just about facing those external challenges.
Right.
It's about changing the way we talk to ourselves.
Exactly. She talks about shifting from a helplessness mindset to a power mindset.
Okay.
Instead of feeling like life is happening to us,
Right.
we start to feel like it's happening for us.
Okay.
We become the creators of our own experiences.
I like that it's about taking ownership
Right.
instead of playing the victim.
Yeah.
But how do we actually make that shift?
Yeah.
What does a power mindset look like in practice?
Well, Jeffers is a big proponent of affirmations. Okay.
These are simple, positive statements that can help us reprogram our thinking.
Okay.
Things like, I am capable, I can handle this, I am strong.
Affirmations, don't those seem a little cheesy?
They might sound simple, but don't underestimate their power.
Okay.
This technique actually aligns with cognitive behavioral therapy,
Okay.
which has tons of research behind it.
Right.
Think of it like this. You're essentially training your mind to focus on possibilities instead of limitations, just like those athletes we were talking about earlier.
Okay. I'm starting to see how it all connects.
Yeah.
By changing the way we think and talk about ourselves, we can actually change how we feel and act.
Absolutely.
It's like replacing a negative script with a more empowering one.
Exactly. And Jeffers gives us some really practical tools to help us with this mind makeover.
Okay.
One that I found particularly helpful is the idea of developing a power vocabulary.
Power vocabulary. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It's about paying attention to the words we use.
And consciously choosing words that empower us rather than disempower us.
Okay.
So, for instance, instead of saying, I can't do that,
Right.
you could say, I won't do that.
Okay.
Or instead of, I should try, you could say, I choose to try.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it that way, but it's true.
Right.
Those subtle shifts in language really do change the way I feel about a situation.
Yeah.
It's like I'm taking control instead of feeling obligated.
It's about shifting from a sense of powerlessness to a sense of agency.
Okay.
And these small changes in language can have a big impact on our thoughts and behaviors.
So I could literally talk myself into feeling more confident and empowered.
You absolutely can.
Wow.
Remember, our thoughts create our reality. Another practical exercise that Jeffers suggests is the fear hierarchy.
Oh, yeah. I remember the podcast mentioning that.
Yeah,
Isn't that the one where you list out all your fears and kind of like confront them head on?
that's the one.
Okay.
But it's not as scary as it sounds. The idea is to list your fears from smallest to largest, creating a sort of hierarchy. And then you start by tackling the smallest fears and gradually work your way up.
Okay.
It's a step-by-step approach to expanding your comfort zone.
So it's like a personalized training program for building courage.
Exactly. It's like that saying, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step.
Right,
Each
yeah.
time you face a fear, no matter how small, you build confidence. And you realize that you're capable of handling more than you thought.
This reminds me of how I learned to swim.
Oh, yeah.
I started in the shallow end and then gradually worked my way to the deep end.
Yeah.
It took time and patience, but eventually I overcame my fear of the water.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that brings us to one of the most powerful tools that Jeffers offers,
Okay.
the no-lose model for decision-making.
Ooh, the no-lose model. I remember that being a big highlight in the podcast episode.
Yes.
What makes it so special?
Well, the no-lose model is all about reframing our relationship with decision-making.
It helps us overcome the fear of making the wrong choice,
Right.
which can be paralyzing for so many people.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Analysis paralysis is definitely a thing.
Jeffers' model eliminates that analysis paralysis
Okay.
by suggesting that there are no wrong choices,
Okay.
only different paths with unique lessons to offer. Each path, regardless of the outcome,
Yeah.
has something valuable to teach us.
So it's about shifting the perspective from seeing decisions as like potential pitfalls to seeing them as opportunities for growth no matter what happens.
You got it. It's about embracing the unknown and trusting that we'll learn and grow regardless of the outcome.
Right.
This model can be incredibly liberating, especially when facing major life decisions.
This is such a helpful way to think about it. It takes the pressure off needing to have all the answers up front.
Exactly.
I love that.
And it connects perfectly with the concept of a growth mindset,
Yeah.
where we focus on continuous learning and development.
Rather than fixating on successes and failures, it's about seeing every experience, every decision as a chance to evolve.
I love this idea. So instead of fearing the unknown, we can embrace it as an adventure. It's like we're turning fear into fuel for growth.
Exactly. It's about reframing our relationship with fear.
Yeah.
Seeing it not as an enemy to be conquered,
Right.
but as a companion on our journey of growth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I'm starting to see how fear can actually be a powerful tool for personal transformation.
Yes.
It's like Jeffers is saying, don't let fear hold you back. Let it propel you forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like Jeffers is giving us permission to embrace like the messiness of life and trust that we'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah, trust the journey, even when we can't see the destination.
Right.
And speaking of journeys, the podcast episode ended with a really powerful call to action.
Oh, yeah.
It challenged listeners to identify one fear that's been holding them back and to really consider what might be possible if they faced it head on.
So it's not just about understanding fear.
It's about taking action, taking that first step, no matter how small, and seeing where it leads.
Because oftentimes the things that scare us the most are also the things that have like the greatest potential to transform our lives. It's like those scary roller coasters at the amusement park. Yeah. They're terrifying before you get on.
Right.
But afterward, you feel exhilarated and maybe even a little bit taller.
I love that analogy. So fear is not a stop sign. It's like a signpost pointing us towards growth and excitement.
Exactly. And remember, Jeffers' work isn't just about theory. It's about giving you practical tools to apply to your life right now.
Absolutely. We've covered so much in this deep dive: the 3 layers of fear, the 5 truths, the power of language, the no-lose model, and the importance of facing our fears head on. It's like a toolkit for personal transformation.
And it is.
Yeah.
And all of these tools point to one core message. Fear is inevitable, but we don't have to be ruled by it. We have the power to choose how we respond to it.
We can choose to let fear paralyze us, or we can choose to use it as fuel for growth. It's like having a superpower.
That we can either ignore or harness for good.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, dear listener? What's that one fear that, if faced, could unlock the most potential in your life right now? Is it finally starting that business you've been dreaming of? Or maybe it's having that difficult conversation you've been putting off?
Whatever it is, I really encourage you to sit with that question and see what comes up. And if you're feeling inspired to delve deeper into Jeffers' work, we highly recommend checking out her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's packed with even more insights and practical exercises that you can start using today.
Remember, you have the power to choose courage over comfort, growth over stagnation, and ultimately to create a life that is truly fulfilling. And just think how proud future you will be once you've tackled that fear.
You've got this. We're cheering you on.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep pushing beyond your comfort zone. That's where the magic happens.